Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last edition of Friday at 4 for 2019. Hard to believe that the decade is coming to an end. And as always, I'm with Amanda Van Deerheiden. Amanda, I hope you had a very Merry Christmas and a happy couple days off. It's good to see you again.
Hello, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful time with your families and are enjoying and are having fun wrapping up the week strong and the year.
So, we're wrapping up the year, getting ready for the New Year's holiday, and looking forward to a very strong and successful 2020. I know Amanda's been putting a lot of thought into today's show, so I'm going to kind of let her drive it from here on in, and we'll see where this takes us.
So, a big topic this week on everyone's mind is reflection, wrap up of the year, what happened, what went well, what didn't go well. And I know a lot of people are out there, there's a lot of content out there. So, I did want to take the time to talk to everyone about it. One of my favorite things to do personally and with my clients is to talk about at the end of the year, after you've wrapped up and you've closed out everything. Can you put one word or one label or one short phrase to your year? So for 2019, my overarching theme was transformation. I transformed in my professional life, in my personal life, in my relationships. That's the word that probably wraps and summarizes my 2019. Jim, what would be a word or a phrase that would summarize your 2019?
I would say moving forward, which is two words, right? So for me, it was going from where I was this time last year, both professionally and from a business aspect, and always pushing it forward every month to attain my goals. And when I look back at the end of this year, I think that I did a very good job in reaching the desired levels that I had anticipated I would get to.
Yeah, so if you wanted to summarize that one word, it'd be progressing, right? So mine was transformational, yours is progressing. And I would challenge everyone on the call to think about it. If you could only use one word to summarize your year, and it gets important, and I would write that down when you close up, whether you journal or you do your, expense reports or whatever it is, put it somewhere, put it in your file for 2019. And if you start to do this each year, you really start to see your progress, because sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you don't see how far you've come. And if you have that record, if you can look back at the past year, 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, you start to see trends, you start to see how you've progressed, and then you can say, where do I want to go? Why is this important, right? Where are we going in the future? And that's why it's so important to take the time. I know everybody's so busy and they're burnt out from the holidays, but it's so important to really think through this past year and years in the past, and figure out what worked for you, what didn't work for you, so that you can set the tone for 2020 and set it on the right foot. So another thing I want to talk about with reflection is a lot of times people do it at work. They have to do an end of year report. They have to do end of year whatever. So usually a lot of people are very versed in doing end of year wrap ups for their professional life. But I would also challenge you to do it for your personal life. So there's a few questions I really like to ask my clients to get them thinking about it. So Jim, can you name one person who was the most influential person for you this year? It doesn't have to be your wife. It doesn't have to be someone from your family, but think about your year and who was the person who most inspired you this year or impacted your year?
Well, I'm gonna go with my wife on this one, and the reason is she has been in school. She is a nurse. She's progressing through her education while working full time as a nurse, and watching somebody move through that process every week, every month, to attain her goals on a quarterly level. Nursing is tough. The education for nursing is tough. You don't move forward if you don't pass certain benchmarks. And watching somebody go through that while still being involved with a family, again, working full time, really gives you a lot of faith that if you put your mind to something, you can get it done. And watching that all year, I thought that was a very, very positive influence, not only on myself, but I think our children as well.
Absolutely. For me, I actually had a coaching client who, I won't call her by her name, but I had a client come to me who was at the beginning, mid part of her career, and she's starting to be fed up with where she is. And she finally took control of her own life, and she sought out help, which is why I'm coaching her. And she has been amazing every step of the way. She's fallen down, she's picked herself back up, and I'm so proud of her. And she's finishing this year with a new job, a new apartment, and a new lease on life. And so you can really, I mean, I'm just to be able to be part of that transformation, but also to see that she was fed up with where she was. And so she took control of her life instead of saying, well, this is just the way it has to be. It doesn't have to be that way. And so I was really inspired by her and impressed by her hard work and effort. Um, Next up, I also like to talk about, and I don't like to go negative, but I think it is important to think of the positives and the negatives. You can't just have the fluff, you have to have the hard stuff too. I would say one of the questions that you should reflect on is, who gave you the most trouble this year? Who is the problem child in your life this year? It doesn't have to be a child. And why? And that's an important one. It's an important one, not just who you pick, but why you're picking that person. What does that person represent? How did it shape you? How did it challenge you? And that's an important one. Jim, you might not want to say names on this one, but is there someone you can think of that really, you really had a hard time with this year, and how that impacted your year?
Yeah, I would say, and obviously I'm not going to name names, but I would say from a professional level, there were a couple individuals who unfortunately didn't lay out the game plan from a business side, um, maybe upfront the way I would have expected it, if that makes sense. I'm speaking in code, obviously. But because of that, because all the parameters weren't laid out on the table, it was very, very difficult to be successful within the project. And as we move forward, I started to realize that the success of this project was going to be limited because these individuals simply either didn't understand the parameters that we were working with or just didn't want to end up with the correct solution. And so it taught me something, which is there are certain things sometimes in life you need to just walk away from, um, like fishing without bait. You can do it, but the chance of being successful is going to be very, very limited. And I try to take that, and I'm going to take that philosophy into 2020.
Yeah, that's a great point. That talks to setting expectations at the beginning of the project, how you're evaluating throughout a project, and how soon you can shift gears to make sure that the end result is a success. So that's a great example, and that's why we think about this. Another reason why we think about it a lot about in my coaching practice, I work with people, and I believe in looking at the whole person. And so if you look at a relationship you're really struggling with, sometimes it's important to understand why you're struggling with it. But sometimes it's a toxic person that you're able to remove from your life. So it's not just one or the other, but I think that reflecting on it can be so helpful and so insightful. So moving forward, we talked about work, wrapping up work for the year. We talked about wrapping up your relationships and your people for the year. I also think it's important to look through your health. I know I keep record of any days that I don't get sick a lot, but I keep record of days I'm feeling off or I'm not feeling my best. But it's important to think of your health as the whole being of, your nutrition. How did you treat yourself this year? Were you active? Were you not active? Were you, working 80-hour work weeks and burning yourself out? So again, the whole person we need to look at, not just your work life, not just your family and the people social aspect of your life, but also your health and how you're treating yourself. And the last category I like to do, which a lot of us working professionals who have families and are professionals, we don't have a lot of time for hobbies, right? But I think that it is important to look back and think about the fun parts of your year. What gave you energy? So, Jim, can you tell us about a time or an activity or a hobby that you do that either relieves stress or you enjoy, or maybe you travel? What is it for you?
That's a great point, because you know what, all of us are under a lot of stress, and if you don't relieve that stress, it can have detrimental effects not only to your health but to your well-being, to your business, to your job, to everything. So when I look back, I see that in the summer and into the spring, I was able to play a lot of golf with my son. Not very good golf on my part, much better on his part, but it was a lot of fun just spending time out on the golf course, in the fresh air, and I'm blessed to live in an area where I think we have more golf courses than almost any place in the world. That was really truly enjoyable, and it also uh, brought a different aspect, which was it allowed me to put some goal settings in, some practicing to try to get better. And of course, golf is something like most sports you're always trying to get better at. And it took my mind off the daily grind of business. So I'm really thankful for that. That was a lot of fun. And again, being in Florida, it was something that having all this around us, I didn't really used all that much. But this year we truly got into it, and it turned out to be a really good thing for us.
That's great. Yeah, mine was also sports related this year. I got back to my roots. I'm a professional horseback rider. I was born on a farm in Kentucky. And so I've actually been around horses my entire life and rebelled and went into corporate America. And so within corporate America, it's very difficult to keep that schedule. But this year I went back to my roots and I did a lot more riding, and it really represents who I am as a person. And when I'm not doing it, I lose a piece of myself. So it was really great to be able to do that this year more. 2018 was my travel year. I traveled to, it was 5 different countries and 13 different states. So 2018 was my major travel year, but 2019 was definitely back to my roots, professional horseback riding. I brought up a young horse and brought it along and found it a good home, and kept with it. So it was coming back to what makes me me. And it sounds like, golf did that for you, because not only were you doing golf and being outside and enjoying all the perks of that, but also with your son. And that's a key point too, is family. I know Jim always talks about family is key and his number one. So that's great. That's great to hear it. So wrapping this topic up, there's a lot to reflect on. If you can Google it, there's a lot of lists that can prompt you and give you, prompting questions for how you want to wrap up your year. But I would implore you to do that. Take the time, take an hour, get rid of all distractions at least, and think through. Maybe you did a really thorough one for work so that you're good on that front, but maybe you want to do one in your personal life. Take stock, take inventory, because what that's going to take you to is next year. 2020 is around the bend. So next week, we're going to talk a lot about goal setting, and we'll do deep dives into that. But to get you started, because it's coming, I do want you to think about where you've been in terms of, my favorite thing to do is where you want 2020 to lead you. So if you've put a label on this year, if you've given it a word, what do you want 2020's word to be? Because if you know that, then you can reverse engineer it. So I always like to say, design the life you want, think about the life you want, and then retroactively work backwards to make it happen. That's the easiest way to accomplish a goal, is to break it into little parts. But the first thing you have to do is define the goal. So I'm going to put Jim on the spot here. But Jim, do you have one big goal that you can give us a taste for next year, for 2020?
I do. And my word is proactive. My word is to make sure that I am ahead of everything that could possibly hit me. Now, I know that probably sounds unrealistic, but instead of being reactive, as I think a lot of us are, because we have to be, things come at us every day. What I've been planning and doing is looking at my week, my month, my first quarter, second quarter of next year, third, fourth, and trying to be proactive. Where do I want to be, and how do I get there? So what do I have to do to get there? Understanding things are going to come in and stimuli is going to hit us, but I'm going to be proactive and hit those issues head on. And in fact, identify issues that may not exist so I can possibly take care of them if they should come head on. And I think it's tough sometimes, and it can be a little draining, but once you push through it and you get yourself to a point where you're in front of any issue that could be a problem and any issue that could actually help you being successful, you're actually going to see the benefits of that. So my word for 2020 is proactive.
And that is an amazing segue to something we want to tell you about. We're speaking of Friday at 4. We're growing, and we want to thank you so much for coming on this journey with us in 2019. And in 2020, we're going to make it bigger and better. So to be proactive, we're actually going to start doing a content calendar. Each month, we're going to release what the theme of that month is. And we're going to give you some ideas of topics we want to cover, but we want to hear from you. We want to make sure we're covering your specific questions. So we are going to be proactive in the sense that we're going to put out what our ideas are that we're going to be discussing. But if something should come up with overwhelming demand, we can definitely be flexible and adapt and make sure that we cover that content as well.
Absolutely. We want to thank you for this year. These last 6 months has seen an increase in our audience and an increase in just the questions we're getting. And, you know, from Amanda and myself, we definitely want to wish you a very happy and safe New Year's holiday, a very successful 2020. And if we can all work at this together, maybe we can help all of us out in being successful in 2020. Please, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel. Visit our website at www.grtas.net, grtas.net. You can send us some information. You can sign up for our newsletters. But all in all, thank you again. And we wish you nothing but the best in the coming year. And Amanda, have a very happy and safe New Year's holiday. And we'll talk to you next week.
Happy New Year, everyone. We look forward to working with you in the new year.